First of all, we want to acknowledge our American friends that are joining us this morning. We understand that it has been a very difficult week in the United States with anti-racist protests. So we appreciate you spending this morning with us. And for all the folks joining us from Mexico, we greatly appreciate your time as well this morning. Our guest today, she is very, very humble, so she doesn't like speaking about herself. So I will take a little bit of time to introduce her. She has been the Undersecretary of Economic Relations and International Cooperation in Mexico's Secretariat of Foreign Affairs. She has also been the Assistant Undersecretary for International Trade Negotiations in Mexico's Secretariat of Economy. She has headed the Mexico trade offices in Brussels and in Montevideo, and she has worked in the NAFTA office in Washington, D.C. She's a former Wilson Center Fellow and has a degree in International Relations from El Colegio de Mexico, a master's in International Political Economy from Carleton University, and a PhD in Political Science from Yale University. She's the current Undersecretary of Foreign Trade, Luz Maria de la Mora. Undersecretary, how are you?
Very well, thank you, Alberto. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you today and with all your audience. So happy to share with you Mexico's perspective on USMCA.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Alberto Villarreal. I am the Managing Director of Nepanoa Transformation Advisory. And what we do at Nepanoa is we help multinational businesses implement change in their operations in Mexico and Latin America. Today, we're going to be having a conversation based on 5 questions that we received from the audience. And before we begin, I want to mention a couple of housekeeping items. At the bottom of your screen, you have 3 buttons. One of them is raise hand, another one is allow to talk, and there's a third one called Q&A. If you have any questions for the Undersecretary, please type them into the Q&A box and we will get to them at the end of the session. In addition, before we begin, I want to see how awake everybody is. So we're going to start with a poll. So the question is, does your company have a plan to comply with USMCA, T-MEC, CUSMA? So it shows 52% and 52%. To be honest, I do not know how that is possible, but it's right. But it's right in the middle, right? 50-50. Okay, good stuff. Good to know. Well, hopefully the conversation that we're going to have today, it's going to provide more clarity into those that don't have a plan, right? To start thinking about one. So let's dive into the first question, Undersecretary. And we wanted to ask you, what is the reason behind implementing USMCA during COVID-19? With everything going on in the world, specifically in North America, the decision was made to keep the implementation date of July 1st and to move forward. What was the reason behind that decision?
Thank you, Alberto. Well, I think that the word that could summarize this decision is certainty. And let me explain to you what do we mean by this. First of all, we have to understand that this is a process that comes from the renegotiation of NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement that's been in place for more than 26 years. NAFTA has enabled the 3 of us, Mexico, the US, and Canada, to produce together. We are a North American manufacturing production, and we are a North American market that's been integrated, and where the 3 of us together have helped each other to become more competitiveness, and we have been able to increase the competitiveness of the region vis-a-vis the rest of the world. In 2017, President Trump decided that he wanted to renegotiate NAFTA because he considered that there were some issues that were not in the benefit of the US. We may agree or not with his assessment, but Mexico knew 2 things. First, we knew that NAFTA required an update. Many of the provisions that we have today in the new USMCA were not included in NAFTA because there were sectors in the economy that did not even exist. For example, e-commerce, digital economy. or some rules of origin, for example, in some sectors like the electronic sector, which those rules of origin dated from the 1990s and they did not reflect the innovations that we've had. So when President Trump proposed to renegotiate NAFTA, on one hand, we knew that we had to update it, but on the other hand, we also had the threat from the US that if there was no renegotiation, that there would be the possibility of the US withdrawing from the agreement. And that was something that was very challenging for the three countries. So we started this negotiation in August of 2017. So that's basically 3 years ago. We finished this negotiation in August of 2018. And it's been 2 years since we've been trying to implement this agreement, which also took time because there was the need to renegotiate some aspects to be able to address some of the Democrats' concerns. So we think that it is important that producers, exporters, investors, consumers have certainty with respect to the rules that will continue to apply after NAFTA and in the North American market. So the COVID-19 that we have been faced with during this year coincided with the process of renegotiation and implementation of the new USMCA. Therefore, we think that implementing USMCA at the earliest possible day will actually help North America to recover, will help North America to continue to participate effectively and efficiently in regional and global value chains, and will also give the opportunity for companies to restructure themselves and be able to cope better with the challenges that COVID-19 has posed today, and I think in the future of developing business and of the whole North American economy. So that's why we think that it is not only important to have USMCA implemented on July 1st, but we also think that it's going to help in the recovery of the economic activity of each one of our countries, of the region, and in recovering those jobs that have been lost as a result of this pandemic.
Sure. Undersecretary, thank you very much for providing us the background also of USMCA, the last 3 years of negotiation.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely the changes that it brings about, taking into consideration what the world is experiencing, what businesses are experiencing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Coming back, re-engaging, providing this new set of rules. It also,
Mm-hmm.
as you mentioned, it provides some certainty. It provides them a guideline as to how things are going to move forward. So taking that as a segue, understanding that most of the changes, or the most drastic changes for businesses, right, where USMCA, T-MEC, CUSMA applies,
Mm-hmm.
it's the documentation and the data, right, to determine source of origin, compliance
Mm-hmm.
with labor
Mm-hmm.
requirements.
Mm-hmm.
Just last night, the uniform procedures to determine source of origin, or well, yesterday, I read it last
Mm-hmm.
night,
Mm-hmm. No,
were
that's
agreed
right.
to. Were agreed
Yeah.
to. From your perspective, number one, there's two questions here. The first one is, how will governments implement this, right? How will Mexico, US, and Canada make sure that businesses are in compliance? And second of all, how should companies prepare for this?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, you're right. Yesterday, we finished the negotiations of the uniform regulations that basically will help companies have some clarity with respect to how to implement the provisions that are included in USMCA. So to your question, how does government implement this? The first thing that we need to remember is that each Congress, each legislature, in Canada, the Parliament, in the US Congress, the Senate and the House, and in Mexico also the Senate, approved of the agreement and the amending protocol, Mexico last year, the US and Canada this year. So with that, we were able to exchange notifications that the three countries had concluded the process in each country to be able to implement USMCA. And in April, we exchanged notifications. So the agreement says that the first day of the third month after we received the last notification, we will be able to implement the agreement. So that put us on July 1st, sorry. What do we need to do to be able to implement this agreement? As governments, we need to adjust some legislations. For example, in the US and in Canada, the USMCA basically is internalized through an implementing bill. So it is the implementing bill that reflects the commitments that the US and Canada made in USMCA. For Mexico, this is an international trade agreement, and the agreement has to be in line with domestic legislation. So we are working with Congress to adjust some of the legislations that have to be adjusted. And I would like to mention that probably one of the most important changes in the agreement and improvements, I would say, has to do with intellectual property, patent protection, copyrights, among many other issues, which are really relevant because they will promote innovation in the region. They will promote investment in value-added activities. And for Mexico, this is very important. We want to make sure that the investment that we attract is investment that knows that they have protection, full protection, as in the US and in Canada, to be able to develop its business.
Sure.
So we are working on that end, and we are adjusting some processes. We need to issue a decree to be able to show that the tariff that we have for trade between the three of us, it's a duty-free basically, because that's what we have. We're continuing to have duty-free access. Now, on the side of government, I think that we are basically ready to implement the agreement. We are very close to being done. The three of us, we're in countdown mode right now.
Fantastic.
Exactly. What we're trying to do with the private sector on the Mexican side has been to do a very important outreach effort. We want to make sure that all companies, entrepreneurs, actors, producers, exporters, indirect exporters are aware about the opportunities that USMCA brings. So for some time already, we have been carrying out important outreach efforts. We have issued a weekly bulletin that's called Reporte T-MEC, or USMCA report, which you can find in the website of the Secretaría de Economía in Mexico. We can share, Lydia can share with you the website so your audience can have access to it. Sure. And those weekly reports focus specifically on each one of the chapters or each one of the issues that we know that may be of interest to the exporters. In that way, we are explaining in a very clear way, in a very non-legalistic way, in a more business-oriented language, what it means and what are the opportunities that USMCA brings. So this is something that we know will be useful for companies to be able to understand what's in the many thousands of pages that the USMCA contains.
Correct.
The second thing that we have done is that we are undertaking a seminar, weekly seminar, which we have been able to broadcast through our social media, and it has really reached thousands of people. This seminar also focuses on the contents of the agreement. Every week we offer experts who can explain either the content of the agreement or the opportunities of the agreement. And this has been very useful for people because these are the negotiators and the technical experts in each one of the areas. And they have been able to explain on a very clear way what does this mean? And we also have been working in Mexico, throughout Mexico, with each one of the 32 states in Mexico to also address the specific opportunities for each one of the states. We are also developing an outreach campaign with the US and Canada, where we are actively participating in explaining to business what this means. And obviously it will depend on the sector where you are. If you're in the manufacturing sector, if you're SME, if you're in the services sector, there are a whole host of opportunities depending on where you are. And we also obviously understand that not everybody is interested in the same thing. Let me give you an example. Under USMCA, we negotiated some sectoral annexes. What does this mean? We have a sectoral annex for the wine and spirits industry. So if you're interested in exchanging or in undergoing trade in this sector, the annex that contains the regulations that need to be complied with will be of interest to you, and they will ease your trade because, for example, there are provisions regarding labeling that will make trade in wine and spirits in the region easier to be done, and also it will imply lower costs. So those are the very specific things that business will need to look into, the issues where they have some specific interest. What is important about USMCA is that it contains the regulations that will need to be fulfilled by the exporters in order for them to be able to take advantage of the agreement. And second, when there are doubts or there are concerns, it also contains ways to be able to address those concerns and to make sure that governments will help this trade to take place.
Fantastic, Undersecretary. Thank you very much for that explanation. A question that we've been getting on the chat is, when will the uniform regulations be published? So we agreed to them, you know, and you mentioned very accurately that you're on a countdown mode. When does that countdown end?
The uniform regulations are already published. You can find them in the website of the Secretaría de Economía. We published them yesterday.
Yep,
they were published in English because the negotiation took place in English. So they're available there. We're in the process of translating them and publishing them in the final language of the three countries on July 1st or around July 1st. But the uniform regulations that will be implemented as of July 1st are already in the website of the Ministry of Economy in Mexico City.
Fantastic. I really liked it because in the first two questions, you started mentioning e-commerce. You mentioned new businesses. You mentioned how does the agreement adapt to new industries and new ways of working and new ways of doing business that didn't exist when the original NAFTA was agreed to. So how does it actually fit into the present and the future of business? And I'm specifically talking about e-commerce, which was a business behavior that had been growing in the US and in Canada. Of course, it's already mature. And in Mexico, it was growing tremendously. But in the last 3 months, we saw how that industry matured, right? How does the agreement fit into that?
Yes, thank you, Alberto. One of the objectives of the renegotiation of NAFTA and the new USMCA is to really have a set of rules that reflect the state of the current economy, that reflects how the economy is evolving. And that's something that was way overdue. And one area in which we can say that the USMCA contributes to the integration of North America and to the creation of new businesses is specifically that related to e-commerce, digital economy, telecommunications, IT, innovation. So it's a whole set of rules that will help to boost this economy. Let me offer a couple of examples. USMCA today is in better shape than other regions in the world or even the multilateral trading system. As you know, we have not been able to develop the new set of rules for e-commerce in WTO. we have a joint initiative in WTO where many countries are participating, but not all 164 members of WTO are participating in this negotiation. Right now, we have a moratorium in terms of duties that are applied to electronic or digital commerce.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a work in progress at the multilateral level. This is a work in progress in OECD. But in USMCA, this is done. So we already have the rules for that. The second thing that I'd like to comment is that without a question, e-commerce is the way to go for several reasons. First, given the situation that we're living right now in the pandemic, what we have seen the economy helping to maintain some activity and to maintain jobs and to maintain people engaged in economic activities has been the digital economy. Everything that is digital in terms of education, services, entertainment, medical access, medical services, access to retail has been through electronic means, right?
Sure.
So what USMCA offers is the framework for this e-commerce to boost and to take place. And in addition to that, some of the provisions that have to do with investment, with services, intellectual property, telecommunications will also help to strengthen the new business model for North America, and eventually I think it will be also for the world. So we are at the forefront of this development of business. And the third point that I want to mention is that as e-commerce is becoming more the way to do business, we can see that in Mexico, there is a huge potential for developing this sector. Mexico today has around 80 million people who have access to internet. We still have a way to go, but this is basically 2/3 of the population.
Correct.
Around every year since 5 years ago, the rate of growth of the e-commerce market only in Mexico has surpassed 20%. So we are seeing basically an exponential rate of growth of e-commerce in Mexico.
Yes.
Third point, Mexico's population today is a young population, around 25 years old. It's the average age.
Yep.
And we have, as a result of the reform to the telecommunications legislation, we have access, a very wide access for telecommunications services, internet services that will help to develop the sector. So the potential is enormous. We are interested in Mexico in developing platforms, marketplaces like what we have today, Amazon, we have Mercado Libre, we have a few, but
Sure.
we know that there's a huge potential for development. And the fourth point that I'd like to make is that e-commerce, information technology, access to internet services is an excellent way of democratizing the economy. By democratizing the economy, what we're doing is that we are opening opportunities for micro, small, and medium-sized companies that will be able to have access not only to their local markets, not only to Mexico's market, which is 130 million people, close to 130 million, but to the North American market, which is 500 million people. So we are multiplying the possibility of having a market that is basically 4 times the size of the Mexican market. And it is also making it easier for companies to have access to customers that would not be available were it not for e-commerce and the digital economy. So we really know that as USMCA is implemented, we will be able to allow more companies from more sectors, more regions, and of different sizes, shapes, and colors to be able to be part of the North American success story. And that's something that we believe will offer an incredible source of wealth for not only the Mexican companies, but for the North American economy, because it will be a new way of developing business and of doing business. And this is something that we have already seen during this pandemic. And we know that the pandemic will offer the challenge, but also the opportunity of rethinking business models. And I think that we need to be at the forefront of that. And the business community in the US will be able to take advantage of this.
Yeah. Undersecretary, when I hear you speak, and after reading the chapters related to this in USMCA, what is clear to me is that while NAFTA may have been interpreted more of a labor agreement, in this situation, what we're talking about is actually a market expansion. So it's a unification of Canada, US, and Mexico from a market perspective. And e-commerce plays a key role. You said it perfectly. You said this is going to democratize, right, the economy, because you can have a small company in a small town of Mexico reaching clients in the northern part of Canada, right? And the agreement facilitates that. It also allows the possibility for people in Mexico to buy goods in the United States and have them come through customs and through the border. I mean, it's the de minimis value, I think, of e-commerce purchase actually went up. If I recall correctly, it was $2,500. I need to read it again, but it went up into what can cross, and it can actually go, and it can actually be expedited at the border. But that's how the agreement, it's adapting to the new economy. And this became very relevant. Perhaps when you were negotiating it, it wasn't as relevant, right? We saw the trend, it was coming, but then after the last 3 months, I bet that you're glad that this was negotiated and placed into the agreement.
Absolutely. I think that it was something that we were not seeing coming in terms of having a pandemic like what we're having, and in terms of having to shut down the economy as a way to help address a very important health issue and health emergency. But yeah, definitely the provisions that are included in USMCA are definitely up to date, and they will help this new reality for companies that will need to adjust and address some processes. They will definitely have to incorporate issues that are related to health protocols, health protection, and how we coordinate in such a way that we are dealing with that, but also with respect to new ways of creating business opportunities. Let me give you 2 examples. One of them has to do with how NAFTA created business. In 1993, Mexico's trade with the world was $88 billion. Today, Mexico's trade with the world, and obviously this is 2019 information, it will have an impact, the COVID-19 will have an impact, but Mexico's trade with the world was more than $900 billion last year. So we're talking about an increase of more than 10 times throughout 26 years. But let me offer you another number, and that's trade between Mexico and Canada before before NAFTA was implemented was roughly around $2 billion. So NAFTA created trade where there was none. Last year, trade between Mexico and Canada, according to Mexican figures, was $25 billion. According to Canadian figures, it was $35 billion. We sometimes don't have the same information because we know that some of the trade goes through the US, and that's something that has some, let's say, it doesn't allow us to clearly have the picture of where we are. But NAFTA did create business, did create trade where there was none. And let me also tell you that as a result of USMCA, we know that we will be creating business where there's none. Today, the de minimis that we have as a result of USMCA, with respect to access in Mexico, anything that is sold in Mexico through e-commerce means from USMCA will not have to pay VAT, value-added tax, if it's under $50. It will not have to pay any sales tax if it's under $117. And you were mentioning the 2,500. The 2,500
Correct.
to the certificate of origin. You will not have to show that this
Correct.
has to comply with the rule of origin that is provided in the agreement. The numbers vary according to the country. It's different in the Canada and the US, but it does offer a clear set of figures that companies will know about it, and also business people will know exactly what they will be facing. And we're working very closely with some of the courier services companies in Mexico, in the US, and in Canada to make sure that they effectively and efficiently can support the e-commerce activity in the region, because we know that this will boost the economy and this will put us back on track of a path to growth that we so badly need right now.
Undersecretary, at Nepanoa, we have written several papers. One of them, of course, with the key changes in USMCA, T-MEC, CUSMA, and in how businesses should react. And based on what we do, we always think of transformations from a business, people, and technology perspective. And as we have this conversation, and as I read the agreement, I was very glad to read that it actually provides the opportunity of growth. It's not only an agreement that enables you to comply with new regulations or with a new set of rules, it actually provides the opportunity of the generation of new businesses, which we're discussing right now, and that it's updated to what we're experiencing. I mean, the behaviors of people for the last 3 months have radically changed. Mm-hmm. In my personal perspective, there are going to be things that are going to stay, and there are other behaviors that will actually come back. So mm-hmm. we're going to be in the middle, at least for the next 2-4 years, but that's my personal perspective. Mm-hmm. But the point is that the fact that businesses can now access the market across the mm-hmm. region, to me, it's impressive. So what would you recommend to people that are thinking of starting their business and that mm-hmm. want to use this as a platform, or mm-hmm. perhaps existing businesses that need to transform themselves mm-hmm. and think of other markets? Mm-hmm. What do you recommend to them, in relation to USMCA T-MEC? What should they mm-hmm. be doing? What should they be looking for?
Okay, let me give you a couple of numbers, and then from there I will offer a few comments, see sure. if they can be of help to you.
Sure.
As a result of USMCA's implementation in the future, where we are coming from and where can we get to? Where we're coming from, USMCA takes place, or will be implemented in a very particular situation for North America, where the three of us are main trading partners. Mexico, the US, and Canada are main trading partners among each of us. In 2019, Mexico became the US largest trading partner as a result of growth, but also as a result of the conflict, the trade tensions that are taking place between the US and China. So today, around 15% of all the trade from the US is done with Mexico on an import and export basis. So we're already principal trading partners. In terms of what products do we trade, there are, I would say, 3 sectors that are the main actors here. One of them is the auto sector, obviously, vehicle production and auto parts. The second one is electronic products. The third one is electrical components, machinery, and equipment. So that makes basically 50% of what Mexico and the US trade. That gives you a whole host of sectors that are participating, but have not been able to make those inroads. So there's huge potential. One of them, for example, medical devices. Mexico is a very important producer of medical devices, is among the 10 largest producers in the world. And we know that the health sector is a sector that will have to be strengthened, and there will be some adjustments in the region and in the world to make sure that we have access to those products, services that we need in terms of personal protection equipment, medical devices, pharmaceuticals, and all the products that are required to be able to have a healthy environment in terms of the pandemic that no?
Sure.
And there are also few states that participate in trade. Normally, it is Texas, California, the ones that take the bulk of the trade activity with Mexico. We need to include more states and more sectors in this trade. And we know that all of the rest have the great opportunity to be able to participate. Now, for the future, the current pandemic, as well as the current conditions of international trade, are calling from a reassessment of global value chains. That doesn't mean that we will restructure value chains in such a way that everything will be local as opposed to global. I think that the local will become more important in certain segments of the value chain and in certain sectors. So there is there's already been some time in which companies and governments have been thinking how to reassess and how to restructure those global value chains. In certain sectors, and I would say that at this point, the medical sector, medical devices, pharmaceutical is an important sector where we're seeing some reassessment, and some ways in which, how do we make sure that global value chains are shortened to be able to guarantee that the vulnerability to the situation which we had before the pandemic took place will be reduced. And there are some other global value chains that are starting to reshape. So I think that we are going to see some changes, and to the extent that we, as North America and as North American companies, can offer what these global value chains need, I think that we're ideally positioned to increase our participation in those global value chains. And one last example I would like to offer at this time has to do with the auto sector.
Sure.
The auto sector and the USMCA has very strict rules. The regime of origin is extremely different from what we currently have in NAFTA, and will require more regional procurement. So there is a huge opportunity there for companies in the steel sector, in the aluminum sector, in the electronic sector, in the upholstery sector. I mean, all sorts of activities will be able to profit from this regime, that we need to make sure that procuring from North America will make us, or will help us to comply with the rule of origin, to comply with the rule to the regime, but also to ensure that our competitiveness remains untouched and our competitiveness is improved as a result of this. So I do see a lot of opportunities in this new USMCA for business to take part of these global value chains.
Thank you, Undersecretary. Also, and we haven't mentioned that much, because when we talk about trade, we immediately go into products, into goods, but there's also a component of services across the North American region, right? That there's also that opportunity to provide services in Mexico, in Canada, and in the United States. And I think that that's also important to address as we go into this new world, into this new economy, thinking of North America as a full economic region from a manufacturing, goods, but also from a services perspective. We have talent in the three countries that can be leveraged across the board.
Absolutely. Yes, I think that services, sometimes it's been dismissed and it has been neglected, but there is a huge opportunity in the services sector. The services sector basically is open. Those sectors that remain under certain restrictions are clearly identified in the services annexes of the USMCA. So if you have any doubts, you may look into them. For example, postal services. No, those are the ones that have some restrictions. But other than that, I would say that the services sector is basically open. The most important services that we've traded in the past have to do with transportation, logistics, tourism, of course, no? Entertainment. But we have a whole host of questions that, sorry, a whole host of sectors that are new, for example, everything that has to do with information technology, with services related to e-commerce, services related to the digital economy, all of those are open. And what companies should be looking into is what are the provisions that are contained in USMCA, and how can they develop their businesses or increase their businesses as a result of the opportunities, the market opportunities that USMCA offers with respect to regulations, with respect to the legal frameworks in each country, and with respect to the kind of opportunities that USMCA offers. And I think that today, more than in any other time, the fact that we are relying more on a knowledge-based economy, on a value-added economy, and on an economy that is dependent on the internet, on electronic means, the services sector becomes even more important. And the fact that we have very clear rules with respect to what companies can do, I think that it opens a new set of huge opportunities for all companies of all sizes and in all sectors.
I agree, Undersecretary. I mean, think of Nepanoa, for example, right?
Right. You're a very good example.
I used to spend, you know, I'm based in Chicago, and I used to spend more than half of the year in Mexico City traveling back and forth. I do not believe that's going to be the case going forward.
No, you have these platforms to be able to develop your business.
They already existed and we were using it, but now everybody has tried them. You know, just the pool of users expanded greatly. Now even my mom gets her groceries online. I love that. The key is, you know, that's why I say that it's going to come back. I think there's going to be a middle ground. There's going to be people that like this type of behaviors, and others will go back to the old ways. So the final one, I mean, you've been speaking about actions and about business for 40 minutes now. And Undersecretary, just to sum it up, I mean, what would be the 2 or 3 actions that you would recommend, you know, business, and we're not focusing on a specific industry right now, we're talking in general, but what are the 2 or 3 actions that they should take right now? Like, hey, let's look into the agreement, or you know, assess how it impacts you. I mean, just to sum it up, and then we'll go into Q&A from the audience, because we have a handful of questions.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think that what business needs to do is have information, have the right information. So please look into the agreement. Please look into all of the tools that we have made available, not only in Mexico, but also in the US and Canada, to make sure that you have the right information. Ask the right questions that your business needs to address in order to be able to have the full information. We are available. Please contact us. We know that we can be of help whenever any company has some questions. Please do not think that there's nobody around. We are available. We want to make ourselves available in Mexico City. We also have in the US, the US Embassy, the representative of the trade office in the US is also available, and the network of Mexican consulates in the US, which is the largest that we have abroad, is available. In Canada, we also have a representative in the Embassy of Mexico in Canada, in Ottawa, and we have a few consulates throughout Canada. So we are available. We want to make sure that we can answer your questions. And third, I think that the business contact is also very important. Sometimes it feels like there's a mystery in doing business because we don't know the language. I can assure you that in Mexico, all people who are involved in business, they know the language. They know that English is the business language. Sure. And if not, we have the translators. We already have the technology, the digital translators to make sure that happens. So there are really no barriers to increasing trade and increasing opportunities among the 3 countries. So I would say that it is a matter of defining what is your business target, defining what you want to develop, and obviously adjusting to the opportunities that you find along the way. But the opportunities are definitely there, and they need to be worked out. So we want companies to be able to take advantage of USMCA.
Beautiful. Thank you, Undersecretary. Now let's pass to the Q&A, and I have placed, your social media accounts
Mm-hmm.
so that people know where to reach you and where to reach
Please.
us here at
Mm-hmm.
Nepanoa. They're on the
Mm-hmm.
screen for
Mm-hmm.
everybody. And we have a handful of questions. So the first one is, and I think I know the answer to this one, but I'll still ask it is, are we expecting any delays in the actual implementation, right? I mean, we said it's going to be July 1st, but are any industries going to get a little bit of more time to adapt?
No, I think that we're all ready to start USMCA. Let me just offer one specific example. For the auto sector, vehicle producers of in the OEM sector, the original equipment manufacturing, for light vehicles and heavy trucks. There is a possibility that for companies that may think that they need more time to be able to comply with a new origin regime, they may apply for a transition that is longer than the 3 years provided in the agreement. So that's on an individual case. Mexico, the US, and Canada have made available the possibility of making that happen. We published on April 30th the rules for companies that may want to request this transition. It is done on a company basis, company by company. And if there's any company in the original equipment manufacturing sector that is interested in having a longer transition, they may apply before July 1st. And we will be considering those requests, the 3 countries. So that is the only, let's say, transition that we may be able to see. Other than that, we are ready to implement USMCA on July 1st.
Fantastic. Okay. What are the main challenges for USMCA T-MEC to create the most competitive region worldwide? For North America to be the most competitive region worldwide, if you ask me, I think we have everything to do it. What are the main challenges?
Well, I think that the challenges have to do more with the for one hand, we need to make sure that companies can actually participate in the value chain. In the auto sector, for example, we know that there are new opportunities for companies to be able to supply. So we need to strengthen those supply chains and those value chains, and we need to make sure that companies who want to be part of that can comply with the requirements of the final producer or the final exporter. So there is a challenge, but there's also a huge opportunity there. The second one has to do with making sure that in terms of trade facilitation, in terms of customs procedures, that we ensure as governments, but also as businesses, that we make sure that really that those facilitation provisions take place. We know that trade facilitation, we know that improved customs procedures, improved customs clearance may help to reduce the cost of doing trade by probably 15%. So this is very important to us. We're working very hard to make sure that we have a very efficient and also a very effective way of having trade be done in such a way that we make sure that costs are reduced, time is reduced, and the logistics chain in North America works effectively.
Perfect, Undersecretary. We have 2 more questions, and I do think that we have time for them. I'm going to give you a statement, and I want to see your reaction to it. Mexico is the biggest winner of USMCA T-MEC CUSMA.
I think that North America is the biggest winner of USMCA. I think the 3 countries have a lot to gain from this. As I mentioned at some point during this presentation, the 3 of us are main trading partners to each other.
Agreed.
So this is a partnership where the 3 of us are winning. And we're winning certainty, which I think is the most important aspect of having USMCA. We're winning market access. The US is our largest trading partner. It's basically around 65% of our trade is with the US. 80% of our exports go to the US. More than 50% of our imports come from the US.
Sure.
Same with Canada. Canada is our 3rd largest trading partner. We're the 4th largest trading partner to Canada. So we are main trading partners. So the most important winner is North America, North American production, the North American value chain. And remember that the three of us together, make things for North America, for the world, offer services for North America and for the world. So North America is the biggest winner.
Fantastic. I love it. I completely agree with that answer. And finally, and I think this one also applies, I mean, because we talk about jobs, we talk about trade, we talk about products, we talk about services, but all of that is being done by people. And there's people, you know, and the talent in the three countries. So we didn't touch on it, but there is, you know, there's a chapter in USMCA that talks about it. I mean, and I don't want to talk about trade, but it's the exchange of capital or talent between the three countries. I think that's the right way to put it. How does the agreement address that?
Well, the agreement addresses that in several ways. We have a competitiveness chapter. The competitiveness chapter creates a competitiveness committee. And among the issues that are included in the agreement, we are recognizing that the human resource and the human talent is key. We need to make sure that we have the right talent to be able to compete effectively in the world. And we know that the three of us have to adjust our own curriculum at school, in college, in technical schools, to make sure that we have the kind of human resources that can help develop the new economy. We are, for example, I mean, let me just offer one specific number. McKinsey made a study that says that around 30% of jobs in the next decade will be related to information technology or automation. The World Economic Forum calls for around 6 million jobs in automation and artificial intelligence. So we need to create that kind of talent. Now, a second question has to do with respect for labor rights. Chapter 23 of USMCA contains provisions that call for the implementation, the right implementation of each one's domestic legislation related to labor, and it incorporates the internationally accepted rights of labor in the International Labor Organization. So in this government in Mexico, we are very aware about the fact that we need to improve the life of workers. We need to make sure that workers enjoy better incomes. In fact, during this administration, jobs along the US-Mexico border have doubled, and also jobs throughout the country have been increased twice, first 15% and then 20%. And that has not created any inflation. But we know that provisions related to internationally recognized rights of workers will help also to increase productivity. At the end of the day, what we need to do is have the human talent in North America that has the capacity to offer value added to the process, to the production process, to the economy, to be able to have better wages and better standards of living for all of us throughout the region.
I really liked your answer to that final question, Undersecretary. You know, when we think specifically of Mexico, right, that we have, that we graduate more than 130 engineers, 130,000 engineers a year, and thinking of how the future of work looks like and what's the skills that are going to be needed, right? You know, companies, as we transform, will face that decision. Either we train the people that we have, or we go out there into the market and search for them, right? And that is a tough decision that has implications from an economic level, from a personal level, and of course, you know, a business level. And understanding the skills and the talent that Mexico has moving forward, I think it's key. But for all of North America, right? Because the United States and Canada also have, you know, that talent available. So being able to share this knowledge, it's going to be very important as we build the one of the strongest regions, or the strongest region, right?
Right.
Undersecretary, thank you very much for your time. This has been a great conversation, enlightening to me, and I hope that that is the case for our audience as well. Do you have any parting thoughts?
Well, thank you, Alberto. It's a privilege to be with you. Thank you for reaching out to the Ministry of Economy. I want to only finish by saying that we're opening a new era for integration in North America. And I think that it is on us, on each one of us, on each one of the companies that do business in North America, to take advantage of this agreement, to make this a reality, and to have the long-term perspective that North America is a region that is stronger together, and that the three of us are stronger together. And we should build, and we have what we have already accomplished. And I know that there are great opportunities coming in the future for the three of us together and for each one of us individually. So thank you for the opportunity, Alberto, and stay in touch, okay?
We will. This is Alberto Villarreal, Managing Director of Nepanoa Transformation Advisory, and we had a great conversation with Mexico's Undersecretary of Foreign Trade, Luz Maria de la Mora. Thank you, everybody.